Here's the thing, we only scratched the surface. The full 4-week journey begins Monday, February 16th with the Founding Members Cohort. This course is for podcasters, leaders, entrepreneurs, anyone who knows that your next great opportunity can begin or end with the quality of a conversation. Space in this Founding Cohort is limited, so go to TavisTalks.com right now. That's TavisTalks.com. Click register or scan the QR code. Don't let this conversation happen without you.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA, Talk 1580, download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Black History Month. And in Mr. Krim's classroom, we're going to be focusing for the better part of the month on the significance of our history and lock for just a moment the outside world out, focus on who we are. And of course, we'll be integrating what's going on in the world in real time because all of it is American, but more specifically, Black history. The origins of Black History Month. The story of Black History Month begins in Chicago during the summer of 1915. An alumnus of the University of Chicago with many friends in the city, Carter G. Woodson traveled from Washington, D.C. to participate in a national celebration of the 50th anniversary of emancipation sponsored by the state of Illinois. Thousands of African Americans traveled from across the country to see exhibits highlighting the progress their people had made since the destruction of slavery. Awarded a doctorate at Harvard 3 years earlier, Woodson joined other exhibitors with a Black History display. Despite being held in the Coliseum, the site of the 1912 Republican Convention, an overflow crowd of 6,000 to 12,000 waited outside for their turn to view the exhibits. Inspired by the 3-week celebration, Woodson decided to form an organization to promote the scientific study of Black life and history before leaving town. On September 9th, Woodson met at the Wabash YMCA with A.L. Jackson and 3 other members and formed the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. Why February? Why February? Each year, the question is asked, what does the month of February have to do with Black History Month? We'll get to that in just a moment. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and Ernest Krim's Classroom. How are you, Ernest?
Oh, I'm doing great, brother. I mean, it's a wonderful time to be able to celebrate our history. It's 100 years. Even though we face a lot during this time, I'm excited because I think that's just proof of how effective it is, or how effective we are when we learn about who we truly are. So I'm inspired and I'm grateful to be here with you.
And you absolutely should be. I don't know anyone in your generation who articulates the clarity of the significance of Black history against the backdrop of not only American history, but against the backdrop of world history. African Americans are truly a unique people. And some people, and I respect that because it's part of my philosophy as well, understand where we were stripped from, how we ended up here in the United States, or in the Americas, if you will, beyond the United States, the Caribbean, South America, but certainly here in America, North America, which ultimately became the United States. But so much, Ernest, is structured and functions around who we are as a people. Ernest?
Yeah, you know, the unspeakable trauma that we had to go through to get here and what we had to create from nothing. We were brought here by force to build something that we, for the longest, did not benefit from. And I want us to truly remember and realize that everything that we have benefited from, or we benefit from now, whether it be monetarily or politically, socially, economically, it is because of what we created from that. Nothing that we have here was given to us. It is often promoted that way. It is often discussed as if we are the ones who expect handouts, but on the contrary, we are the ones who had to really, literally pull ourselves up from our bootstraps. And of course, like Dr. King would say, we've been the bootless man and woman. We've had to create that from nothing. And I think the importance of this in this time is it is a call of urgency, a sense of urgency we should have to reclaim who we are, because we have to remember those trips that we were forced to take while we were trafficked as cargo. We were mixed up. They took away our names. They took away our tribal groups. They took away the languages we spoke on purpose so that we would not know who we are when we came here. So everything we can do to reclaim that legacy is giving us the motivation and the inspiration and the creative strategies for where we can be going moving forward. We have hundreds of thousands of years prior to this, and we will have hundreds and thousands more, but that will only be productive if we know about who we truly are.
I don't think it could have been stated any clearer. I would only add to it that when you think about the sojourn of the Negro in America, you have to also reflect upon it spiritually. And by that, I mean, I think of the story often of Jonah in the belly of the whale. And some people actually feel really sorry for Jonah in the whale because the whale, obviously in the biblical story, consumes Jonah. But Jonah in the whale actually has access to all of the whale's vital organs. I mean, he can kick the whale in the stomach. He can grab him by the cojones. He can tickle his brain. He can poke at his eyes. Jonah has an unusual perspective in the belly of the whale. And the journey of African Americans, while often discarded and ignored, actually shows the formation of the nation's political parties. Why? Because Malcolm said, we were here before Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we were here before the Declaration of Independence. That would be July 4th, 1776. And so we watched the parties come into existence. We watched the Constitution come into existence. We watched them add the Bill of Rights that did not apply to us come into existence and the subsequent amendments. And so the perspective of African Americans inside of the belly of the whale, this hour, an institutional organization, the United States of America, that is bent on spreading white supremacy around the world, we have something to say. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, and when we come forward, we'll be back in Mr. Krim's classroom. We're walking through Black History Month.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
My son loves to fly kites, but my active psoriatic arthritis can sometimes hold me back. Now with Skyrizi to treat my skin and joints, I'm ready to go. Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults, helps with less joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and fatigue. For those who also have plaque psoriasis, 90% clearer skin is possible with just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
With Skyrizi, there's nothing like clearer skin and better movement, and that means everything. Ask your doctor about Skyrizi today and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZI to learn more.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part, they accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right. So we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2025 Nielsen report.
Are you 50 or older? This news is for you. The CDC recommends you get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at risk. People 50 or older are over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia compared to adults 18 to 49. Just one shot can help protect you. Learn more and schedule at vaxassist.com. That's VAXassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Hey, KBLA delegation, you know what's better than laughing? Laughing while celebrating the legends who made us laugh in the first place. KBLA Talk 1580 is proud to present our annual Black History Month luncheon. And this year, we're honoring comedy greats, trailblazers who broke barriers, and funny bones at the same time.
You had to grow up early when we was growing up because your parents were sent to the store to buy. You was too young to buy. I want you to go to the store, give me a 5th of gin and a pack of cigarettes. Mama, I'm 2. They ain't gonna let me have that. Here, take this note. You be a little boy walking down the street with liquor and cigarettes. And your neighbors be going, that's a good little boy right there.
We need a little levity right about now. So we're rolling out the red carpet for comedy royalty. D.L. Hughley, Melanie Camacho, Earthquake, Lunel, Dion Cole, Martin Lawrence, and a surprise guest appearance. It's going up Thursday, February 26th in downtown LA at the Grammy Museum. An unforgettable afternoon of stories, celebration, and yes, plenty of laughs, because let's be real, these legends don't just tell jokes. They have changed the game, opened doors, and made history while making us smile.
You gotta go to child support court. You gotta get there real early in the morning. You see brothers going into court. You see them come out 3 hours later. I can't pay this. Let me talk to you, baby. Please, let me talk to the witness, Sean. Let me talk to the witness. Brother be working for 3 weeks, get his check is $43.
This year, for the first time ever, we have set aside a limited number of individual tickets for the luncheon. They are going to go fast, and when they're gone, they're gone. So if you want a single ticket, or if your company or organization wants to sponsor a table, move swiftly and get to KBLA1580.com right now. All these comedy giants in one room on one stage at the same time? Stop it! This event is going to sell out quicker than right now and sooner than at once. KBLA Talk 1580's annual Black History Month luncheon, Thursday, February 26th at the Grammy Museum. It's gonna be legendary, just like them.
What's up? What's up? What's up? You got to laugh the pain away.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA
The
Talk
Jesse
1580.
Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. King Folly drops the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. We're celebrating and commemorating Black History Month right here in Ernest Krim's classroom. Each year, the question is asked, why does Black History Month occur in February? The relevance of February goes back to 1926 when the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, ANSALA's founder, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, first established the Negro History Week during the second week of February. And why that week? Because it encompasses the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, both men being great American symbols of freedom. Woodson chose February for reasons of tradition and reform. It is commonly said that Woodson selected February to encompass the birthdays of two great Americans who played a prominent role in shaping Black history, namely Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, whose birthdays are the 12th and the 14th respectively. More importantly, he chose them for reasons of tradition. Since Lincoln's assassination in 1865, the Black community, along with other Republicans, had been celebrating the fallen president's birthday. And since the late 1890s, Black communities across the country had been celebrating Douglass. Well aware of the pre-existing celebrations, Woodson built Negro History Week around traditions of commemorating the Black past. He was asking the public to extend their study of Black history, not to create a tradition. In doing so, he increased his chances for success. However, Woodson never confined Negro history to a week. Let me say that again. Woodson never confined Negro history to a week. His life work and the mission of ANSALA since its founding in 1915 represents a living testimony to the year-round and year-after-year study of African American history. Ernest, welcome forward to your show, Ernest Krim's Classroom.
Thanks again for having me, brother. You raise a great point too. I think that's something that has to be reiterated every year. I actually posted a video about this yesterday myself. I think it's very important for people to understand that Dr. Carter G. Woodson never intended for us to only celebrate our rich heritage and history for a month. And in fact, of course, we know it started off as a week. And for somebody of his stature, we know that he would never say, just take 7 days to talk about your history. It was for us to come together and talk about everything that we had been doing the other 51 weeks or the other 11 months, almost like a family reunion of some sorts. And I love the fact that he was able to tie it to something that had already kind of been going on. He struck it at the perfect time, and what I think is also very very cool and interesting about this is when you think about it, to have this country celebrate 250 years and at the same time have us be celebrating 100 years of this. And there's also some synchronicity in the fact that in Philadelphia, they are celebrating 20 years of having Black history as a required course, the only major city, a required course for all kids to take before they graduate. It's almost like he was in perfect alignment with what he had planned.
You know, I have to remind people that why Abraham Lincoln? Because when you think about it, the first 15 presidents, and you have to put yourself in the mindset of the unfreed men and women, the slave. They watched the United States come into existence. They were there. We were there when Thomas Jefferson wrote the magnificent words of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. We were there. We were here on September 17th, 1787, when the Constitution of the United States was written. We were here. We were here when the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution in 1791. Freedom of the press, freedom of the speech, locking up Don Lemon. We were here before these fundamental rights actually applied to us as a people. So to be in that mindset, when Abraham Lincoln shows up as the 16th president, not wanting to extend slavery into the Western states as his primary campaign platform, the Lincoln-Douglas debates, which advocated for Senator Douglas popular sovereignty. In other words, whoever gets to the Western states as the nation began moving from east to west and south to east, whoever gets to a new state first, they could declare what the state would be itself, whether it would be a free state or whether it would be a slave state. And it began a massive rush to get to the West Coast, to get to California. And as settlers settled into their respective territories and they entered the Union, they made the determination as to whether or not they would be a free state or a slave state. Abraham Lincoln's campaign for president opposed the expansion of slavery beyond its existing territories. When he was elected president of the United States, before he could even be sworn in, everyone knew that Lincoln's policy as president of the United States would stop the expansion of slavery into the Western states. And before he could even be sworn in, states in the South began leaving the Union, saying, we don't want to be in a government with Mr. Lincoln. That's how African Americans, who after Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation and executed the Union troops in the American Civil War, all the way up to the final battle in Antietam, and then ultimately to his assassination, out of loyalty to Abraham Lincoln's policies and the way in which he conducted the war over slavery, African Americans were loyal to the deceased president of the United States, and they called themselves Lincoln Republicans. Carter G. Woodson was a Lincoln Republican. Martin Luther King's father was a Lincoln Republican. And so understanding how our people, not now, but then saw Abraham Lincoln, of course, the controversial statements of what he said and what he felt and the timing of which he said, what he said, when he said it, all matter. With hindsight, Lincoln was a real architect for doing something that 15 presidents before him did not do. And that added, in addition to that, a 13th Amendment to the Constitution, ultimately a 14th and 15th Amendment that would guarantee Black men the right to vote. So that loyalty is clear, it's understood. It's why he decided that the second week of February captured both the spirit of Lincoln and the spirit of Frederick Douglass. And from that point forward, Ernest, the idea of Black History Month, and then with teachers like yourself, the idea that must be promulgated that Black history is every single day of the year. It's every time we turn on the news. Don Lemon made Black history last month. In fact, he made American history last month. We've never seen a journalist arrested using and exercising their First Amendment rights to report stories, to share with us the truth, and then find themselves as a Black man arrested for the purposes of exercising rights that other Americans claim to be fundamental.
And it shows, and by the way, you said that beautifully. That was beautiful. I think, again, when you speak to that experience, what Don Lemon went through and is still going through, that's proof of why this history is sorely needed. Because when you see him get punished for simply reporting the truth, as an independent journalist now, it speaks to the long legacy of how we have been silenced and the conundrum that exists, the hypocrisy that exists between what the First Amendment actually says and these other amendments, what they actually say, in the implementation, that wide gap. We exist as those truth tellers throughout our history, not just within those last 100 years, but since we've been here, to expose the hypocrisy that we've seen. To your point, to say that what Thomas Jefferson wrote was eloquent, it was beautiful, it was necessary, but it's not being practiced properly. Don't forget about us. And I think that week that started off as Negro History Week speaks also to the perfect marriage that must exist in this society between politicians and the people, because we have to give credit for, of course, how imperfect Lincoln was, but even with that, he was willing to grow, willing to evolve, willing to listen, and he was here at the perfect time. And imagine if we would not have pushed for that because he wasn't perfect, right? None of us are perfect, but we have to work with those who are most workable, for lack of a better term. But he doesn't get to that point without somebody like Frederick Douglass, right? Frederick Douglass was not a politician. Frederick Douglass was a part of the people, and he represented the people to the point where he could put pressure on this person. Someone who was enslaved, who fought back and gained freedom, wrote several books, went on speaking tours, and agitated against this very institution, was able to sit in the same room as someone at the highest level of this country and speak truth to power. That's what we must continue to commit to today. And I think it's also important to illustrate too with what Woodson did. This was something that he took to another level. There were foundations laid. There was even in the 1890s, Mary Church Terrell and several other Black women in the DC area came together to create a Douglass Day to commemorate him shortly after he passed away, because he meant so much to us. So I think that's also important to elevate, because we know that what we do, we're not creating anything new. We're recreating and we're remixing things. And that legacy is just as important. And the last thing I want to say too on this is, I think in this moment, let's continue to reflect and implement, right? Let's continue to reflect what he had to do in that moment to create this and what we have to do in this moment. 1926, 2026. They came together in 1915, 11 years prior, Black men in Chicago, and said, we need to create something to keep our traditions alive, to remind people, because Dr. Carter Woodson knew that if a race of people don't know who they are on the brink of extermination, genocide, as he said. He knew how lethal this miseducation was. And if we exist now in 2026 dealing with the same things, like slavery and being taken down, only one major city that has to teach our history. And I think that's important, because we understand from that how many other cities don't even have our stories included or incorporated in U.S. history. That's what Woodson ultimately wanted. But as a teacher of 12 years previously, I can tell you that that's far from the truth. So we need to convene again the same way he did in 1915 to create what was necessary in 1926. My question for everybody out there is, what will we create in this moment? What is this moment calling for us to do?
You know, I was just thinking, a professor, listening to what you were saying, and I thought about, other than growing up in my family and realizing by the time I was first exposed to Black history, it was obviously in my family. My father and my family was part of a world historical tradition that I didn't fully appreciate. But I can tell you, when I was in third grade, Mrs. Miller would go in her file cabinet. She had been teaching for decades, and she would pull out the Black history folder. And then she would get her little thumbtacks, and right above all of our coats, all the way around the classroom, she would put up these color pictures of Black people who made contributions in the sciences, in philosophy, in art, in writing. And then we would be quizzed on these various figures. Of course, all of them out of context, but it was our introduction to Black history. It was certainly her understanding of it. But when you think about the complexity of Black history, I mean, there are more Black and African Venezuelans in Venezuela than there are any other folk in Venezuela. They're a unique mix of people: Afro-Colombians, Afro-Cubans, the Haitians. When you think about the Bahamas, when you think about the journey that African people have taken, all of it is part of our history. We are part of a global context of mutuality. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on Black History Month in Ernest Krim's classroom when we come forward.
It's Afternoon Drive Time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has signed an ICE on notice executive order allowing the city to refer alleged criminal misconduct by federal immigration agents to the Cook County State's attorney.
As part of this order, our police department will document ICE and Border Patrol activity and attempt to identify officers on the scene.
City officials say Chicago was the first city to take this step following high-profile ICE-involved shootings in the region. Only 3 black head coaches are expected in the NFL for the 2026 season, despite black players making up about 70% of the league. None of the 10 head coaching openings this hiring cycle went to black candidates, even with the Roney Rule in place. And Hall of Famer Frank Thomas is calling out the Chicago White Sox over a Black History Month post on X. The team shared a graphic celebrating Black First, but only referenced Thomas in a brief mention of Dick Allen's MVP honor. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A year ago on this date, February 2nd, 2025, the Lakers and Dallas Mavericks made one of the most surprising trades in NBA history. Anthony Davis to the Mavericks in exchange for Luka Doncic. The trade ended up being a disaster for the Mavericks franchise. Davis has played in only 29 games for the Mavericks. The deal also led to Mavs GM Nico Harrison losing his job. Davis, once considered a premier player in the NBA, is now the subject of trade talks again ahead of Thursday's trading deadline. Doncic has become an impact player for the Lakers. He's played in 67 games and leads the NBA in scoring this season with 33.6 points per game. Doncic also is second in the league in assists with 8.8 per game. The Lakers front office is still smiling after convincing the Mavericks to make that trade. The Lakers wrap up their 8-game road trip Tuesday night at Brooklyn. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with the world. African Focus Incorporated is a community-based organization whose mission is to bring Africans and African Americans together, lead charitable initiatives on the motherland, and educate people from all walks of life on the beauty, legacy, and opportunity of Africa's 54 nations. And it's that time once again when African Focus is teaming up with KBLA Talk 1580 for our 8th annual African Focus Trailblazers Tour. Travel with us in 2026 when we're headed to the Southern African nations of Zambia and Botswana for a historical, cultural, and vacation tour led by me, Dominique DePrima, Cultural Ambassador for African Focus Incorporated. Enjoy luxurious accommodations, conscious fellow travelers, shopping, adventures, cultural tours, wildlife safaris, and a giant waterfall, one of the world's 7 wonders, along with a chance to be of service at an orphanage on the continent. Become an AFI trailblazer by exploring the motherland with a nonprofit organization that has members in Africa and America to help roll out the red carpet for you, and together we'll make a difference and have fun doing it. For more information, visit africanfocus.org or call 310-676-7300. That's 310-676-7300 or africanfocus.org. Whether it's stateside or exploring the diaspora, we're with you every step of the way. African Focus and KBLA Talk 1580. Come go with us.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Wally drops the beat. Come on and talk with me.
Jesse Jackson Jr.
Come on and talk with me.
We are in Mr. Krim's classroom for Black History Month, the opening of Black History Month, which was inaugurally a week that expanded to a month. But of course, Carter G. Woodson was making the case that every single day is Black history, which means, like John Donne said, I am involved in mankind. I am a part of the continent and a piece of the main. So when Donald Trump bombs Venezuela, I think about Afro-Venezuelans who came here the same way we got here. I think about the Haitians. I think about the Cubans. I think about Fidel Castro helping Nelson Mandela get out of prison, and the relationship between Afro-Cubans and Che Guevara, as well as Fidel Castro, and the efforts that they implored to keep imperialism out of South America and out of the Latin part of South America. The Brazilians, African Brazilians, Afro-Brazilians, all part of Black history, all part of a system that commodified our bodies and brought us here to the United States. And this is probably the best example that I can give you. Imagine going to a grocery store in the frozen section, the canned goods section, the spice section, the cold cereal section, the drink section, the rice and flour section, along with the spices, and of course, the paper towel, the toilet paper, the Pampers, and that section. Imagine every commodity on the shelf. Now imagine a grocery store where young women are in one aisle for sale, where young men are in another aisle for sale, where grown women are for sale, where young men are for sale, another aisle with full-grown men whom they called bucks are for sale. Imagine an aisle with just pregnant women in it. And then you walk into the grocery store of Negroes, and you're able to say, I like this one. Look at the fingernails. Look at the teeth. Look at the eyes. I want this one right here. Look, I want this child right here because this one could be a good person in the house. And imagine this young lady right here. When she grows up a little bit more, she'll be good for breeding. Imagine this. So after the commodification, a system that turned us into commodities. And then here we are, those in America, the Negro, Jonah in the belly of the whale, fighting for his freedom, her freedom, fighting to expand democracy, which was not at the inception of the nation, giving the Negro the right to vote because only white male landowners had the right to vote in the Constitution. the suffragettes movement, women taking advantage of the 19th Amendment and fighting for the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, and then the 26th Amendment, letting 18-year-olds who were being sent to Vietnam, their ability to come back and vote for, or before they even go, vote for their congressmen and their senators, and for successive presidents who would send them to an escalating war in Vietnam, coming back to the United States maimed. The Negro in America is responsible for the idea of democracy, the right to vote. And so today, when the President of the United States can raid the Fulton County Registrar's office and seize their files, when he can threaten the state of Minnesota, we will reduce ICE's impact on the streets of your state if you give us your voter registration files. Or when he picks up the phone and calls the Secretary of State of Georgia and says, I need 11,700 more votes. Can you find them for me real soon? All of which was on tape. The Negro is part of that history. You cannot wake up in this country and not watch the news and not figure out that you are part of the continent and that you are part of the Maine. Ernest Krim?
As I reflect on your remarks, I'm thinking about a statement I posted online recently in regards to what you said about Jonah in the whale. You know, in this moment, a lot of different groups of people are starting to realize what Black folks, Black Americans have always known to be true about this country, you know. And it's something that, of course, we spoke out about when Trump first ran in 2015, about this idea of making America great again. And we called out that hypocrisy. We called it out again. We over the past decade and a half or so, nearly 2 decades, we spoke about Black Lives Mattering. And you'll see a lot of people online talk about just how they've never seen America like this before in 2025 and 2026. And we are rightfully disgusted by that type of comment, because like, what do you mean you've never seen America like this? And the reflection I posted was simply, if you want to know how toxic the food has always been, then talk to the people who have been forced to live in the belly of the beast. And that goes right along with what you said, even about the grocery store. We cannot get out of what we are in now without the wisdom, the Black American, the wisdom that we have had to find a way to survive over the years and generations of the pain we've been inflicted with. The things that we have gained from our experience cannot be taught in the school. We try, but they can't be taught in the school. It's something that you get from lived experience. It's something that's passed down from the elders. It's something that you get from sitting in the barbershop, you know, Saturdays for hours upon hours. It's something you get from sitting in the pew with the church mom, you know, and getting some of that wisdom that she gives you as she pulls out the peppermint from the bottom of her purse. That is the wisdom, that is the experience that people need to hear from in this moment. But that is often the experience that people have consistently rejected. I saw people rightfully disgusted by a comment, a comment that was made during the Grammys yesterday. A country, I guess you would say country, a hip hop artist named Shabuzi, when he won a Grammy, he said something about, you know, America being built by immigrants. And people online were like, whoa, what do you mean? wait, that's not to say that immigrants did not contribute to the building of this nation, but hold on, we're forgetting something. Why does it always feel as though we are pushed to the side? You know, why does it always feel as though people willingly ignore and neglect what we went through and still go through? The proof is how people express. You hear this comment from people on the right and the left constantly. What about the indigenous people who are here? What about our ancestors who were forcibly enslaved and forced to build what has become the richest nation known to man in the belly of the beast? The more we say that comment, it erases what we have done and what we continue to go through. And again, 100 years, if Black History Month or Negro History Week was a person, they would have reached 100 and they would have looked us in the eye and said, y'all still don't get it. I've been trying to tell y'all this for 100 years, and y'all still keep ignoring me as I'm sitting in this church pew telling you what you need to do to save your soul.
interestingly enough, it raises questions that 100 years ago that Carter G. Woodson felt the need to elevate the study of Negro life. That, but for Carter G. Woodson, the study of Negro life obviously reached its pinnacle because Negro didn't know much about his life, and white folks sure didn't know much about Negro life or the Negro contribution to civilization. I mean, America has become civilized in direct proportion to our freedom. Now, American immigration begins to spike for the so-called immigrants once there is a 14th Amendment to the Constitution and there is a clear path to citizenship, not only for Americans from 1867, 68 forward, but we're still debating what constitutes citizenship and citizenship rights today in the United States. And there's no full appreciation of what we had to go through to add the 14th Amendment to the Constitution to even engage that debate. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to Ernest Krim's Classroom on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Professor Krim when we come forward.
Are you stuck in traffic? We can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
USC Visions and Voices invites you to the LA premiere of Major, an exciting new dance theater performance exploring the legacy of Major at Dance. Directed by award-winning choreographer Ogemdi Ude, Major combines music and movement to explore what it means to be proudly Black and proudly femme. Join us on Wednesday, February 4th at USC's Bovard Auditorium. Reserve your free ticket now at visionsandvoices.usc.edu. That's visionsandvoices.usc.edu.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency. All over Febreze car clips right on your face. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face. When it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah, breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
They call it progress, but progress has a price. Land once held in black hands, taken, stolen, erased. Acres paved into highways, fields burned. Homes replaced by parking lots and broken promises. Every deed lost was a dream deferred. We talk about millionaires, but what about the millionaires that never were? The farmers whose soil was seized. The families who watched their inheritance disappear. The wealth that never had a chance to grow because its roots were ripped from the ground. They took the land, but never the legacy, because the soil remembers, and so do we. Every story matters. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and amplify these stories. If this is part of your family's history, visit blacklandlost.org/share your story and help bring us closer to justice.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to our final segment in Mr. Krim's classroom.
Come on and listen to me.
For the better part of this month, Black History Month, and integrating it into real-time conversation about the contributions of African Americans. Founded by Carter G. Woodson, the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History has some recommendations. Go to their website, by the way, Explore Black History. What we can do: read books or stories written by Black authors, support Black-owned businesses, learn more about Black leaders, watch films and documentaries created by Black filmmakers, organize educational events, and of course, but not limited to, commit to Beyond February. Make a strategic commitment to Black History Month and don't limit your efforts to just February. Consider making a monthly donation to ASALH. That's ASALH. This is the association started by Carter G. Woodson for the study of African life and history in the United States. Ernest Krim is our very special guest in this hour. Ernest, what was your interest and what brought you to the subject matter of the need to learn more about Black history?
You know, for me, it's in the wording of my book, How Black History Can Save Your Life. One of the instances I give to people is I was at U of I studying, and I went to college mainly because my parents told me I needed to go to college. That was the main reason. I didn't have anything I was passionate about, though. So I was studying psychology, and I was not doing well my first semester. It was drastically different than what I was used to when I was in school. The wording of the test and the fact that your grade was based off a couple quizzes and all of that just didn't sit well with me. So I was on academic probation after my first semester, and I decided I wanted to take a Black history course. If I wasn't going to be able to come back after this year, at least I was going to learn a little something about myself. And that seed was already nourished by my parents for the 18, 19 years before I even got to that school. We had, posters all around the house, books everywhere. We went to museums, watched the movies and documentaries. So I had everything but that course. But when I sat down and took that course in the winter of 2006, or 20 years ago, in fact, I fell in love immediately because for me, it answered every single question I had about our experience. And it motivated me to want to give it away as much as possible. And I think that oftentimes we think about giving things away as something monetarily, but for me, it was the wisdom, the knowledge that I was able to gain. It is, to me, the single most important thing to our experience here, because once we understand how things got this way, the inequity, then we can properly learn how to solve the issues we face. We don't it's simple as people say, right? You don't know where you're going unless you know where you came from. That's what it is for me, and that's why I still speak about it with such passion today, because we're far from done. I know a lot, but there's a lot I don't know too.
It's amazing. I went to school to study business administration at North Carolina A&T State University, and before I could get through the entire campus on the first day, I was already learning about 4 young Black male students who sat in at the Woolworths at Greensboro on February 1st, 1960, beginning the student movement to sit in for racial justice, and for public accommodation. Before I even applied to North Carolina A&T, one of its luminaries was obviously the Reverend Jesse Jackson, my father. I studied business. I then went on to seminary, and then I went on to law school, but almost in no profession that I have been in as a public servant has been the byproduct of my study. Everything I know about Black history has kept me alive and a relevant functionary in my time and space because of my interest beyond the framework of what I was taught in a classroom. I had to go find out what I know. I have charts. I have written books on Black history, A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights, both in 2001 and
KBLA 15
and updated in 2019. The books that you have written, our interest in who we are makes us relevant in this time because some of our most sophisticated minds, Ernest, while they've performed well and ended up doing well in their subject matters, it is those of us who are fighting to shape the history that actually are fighting for diversity, equity, and inclusion so they can take advantage of the jobs. Do you understand what I'm saying? We're in it at the spiritual and the ground level basis for our progress in this nation.
Yes. Yes, brother. You know, it speaks so much to the cycles of human nature, the cycles that we constantly go through. And if you could, you know, imagine for everybody, you have that period in time, especially for the people listening now. You're listening because you're aware that we need to be in community with each other. We need to be informed about our experience because it is so unique. The moment you wake up and say, you know what, something ain't right here. Like, I'm okay, but the society around me views me as something different, as something negative. When in fact, I know that God has blessed me with who I am and that my ancestry and my heritage and things of that nature. And when I see my neighborhood, something seems a little bit off compared to the other ones. Or I see the fact that when I was growing up and you were growing up, we didn't have a Black president. Something didn't seem right. But then when you study, you find out, oh, it was because this. It was because of that. And it was because of that we still deal with this. So if we don't want that anymore, we got to deal with this. That's as simple as it is to me.
Here are some of the books that that Gina, our producer, is recommending. Children of the Struggle, Radioactive, Political Black Girl Magic, Inside Industrial Segregation, Why Faith in God and Heart and Mind Matter, The City of Hip Hop. There's so much cultural and historical expertise from Black bookstores by Black authors who've given serious thought to where we are, who we are as a people that does matter at this hour. Ernest, we have about 2 minutes before we come to the close. A word of hope.
My word of hope would be to do what Dr. Carter G. Woodson and his friends did in 1915 by creating ASALH, which led to the creation of Negro History Week and Black History Month. Get together with 4 of your closest friends, y'all, and create something that your community needs. Don't think about what the entire country needs. Think about what your community needs. 4 of y'all from various backgrounds who have a common love for your people. Get together weekly. Get together at a third space. Talk about what your community desires, what they have been fighting for, what the missing link is. It could be as simple as I've seen some brothers in Atlanta take their kids to the library weekly together. Like that, all of these little things matter. It is the little things. It is brick by brick that we build the pyramid and the edifice that we desire. We got this, y'all.
I'm confident that we do. And under your leadership, Ernest, I wish you and your family the very best. We're going to have an exciting month of programming here at KBLA Talk 1580, discussing Black history for 2 hours a day in various forms, but also and always relevant to what is taking place in the present. Because this day too shall pass, and it shall become part of Black history, depending upon what we do and what you do in the present. If you take action in the present, your life can be the life that makes the change that we reflect upon one day to change the course of American history. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We've been in the classroom with Professor Krim. Professor Krim, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks again for having me, brother. See you then.
You're always welcome, brother. More on KBLA Talk 1580 History Month celebration when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has signed an ICE on notice executive order allowing the city to refer alleged criminal misconduct by federal immigration agents to the Cook County State's attorney.
As part of this order, our police department will document ICE and Border Patrol activity and attempt to identify officers on the scene.
City officials say Chicago is the first city to take this step following high-profile ICE-involved shootings in the region. Only 3 black head coaches are expected in the NFL for the 2026 season, despite black players making up about 70% of the league. None of the 10 head coaching openings this hiring cycle went to black candidates, even with the Roney Rule in place. And Hall of Famer Frank Thomas is calling out the Chicago White Sox over a Black History Month post on X. The team shared a graphic celebrating Black First, but only referenced Thomas in a brief mention of Dick Allen's MVP honor. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A year ago on this date, February 2nd, 2025, the Lakers and Dallas Mavericks made one of the most surprising trades in NBA history. Anthony Davis to the Mavericks in exchange for Luka Doncic. The trade ended up being a disaster for the Mavericks franchise. Davis has played in only 29 games for the Mavericks. The deal also led to Mavs GM Nico Harrison losing his job. Davis, once considered a premier player in the NBA, is now the subject of trade talks again ahead of Thursday's trading deadline. Doncic has become an impact player for the Lakers. He's played in 67 games and leads the NBA in scoring this season with 33.6 points per game. Doncic also is second in the league in assists with 8.8 per game. The Lakers front office is still smiling after convincing the Mavericks to make that trade. The Lakers wrap up their 8-game road trip Tuesday night at Brooklyn. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, KBLA delegation, you know what's better than laughing? Laughing while celebrating the legends who made us laugh in the first place. KBLA Talk 1580 is proud to present our annual Black History Month luncheon. And this year, we're honoring comedy greats, trailblazers who broke barriers, and funny bones at the same time.
You had to grow up early when we was growing up because your parents were sending to the store to buy. You was too young to buy. I want you to go to the store, get me a fifth of gin and a pack of cigarettes. Mama, I'm 2. They ain't gonna let me have that. Here, take this note. You be a little boy walking down the street with liquor and cigarettes, and your neighbors be going, that's a good little boy right there.
We need a little levity right about now. So we're rolling out the red carpet for comedy royalty. D.L. Hughley, Melanie Camacho, Earthquake, Lunel, Dion Cole, Martin Lawrence, and a surprise guest appearance. It's going up Thursday, February 26th in downtown LA at the Grammy Museum. An unforgettable afternoon of stories, celebration, and yes, plenty of laughs, because let's be real, these legends don't just tell jokes. They have changed the game, opened doors, and made history while making us smile.
You gotta go to child support court. You gotta get there real early in the morning. You see brothers going into court. You see them come out 3 hours later. I can't pay this. Let me talk to you, baby. Please, let me talk to the witness, Your Honor. Let me talk to the witness. Brother be working for 3 weeks, get his check is $43.
This year, for the first time ever, we have set aside a limited number of individual tickets for the luncheon. They are going to go fast, and when they're gone, they're gone. So if you want a single ticket, or if your company or organization wants to sponsor a table, move swiftly and get to KBLA1580.com right now. All these comedy giants in one room on one stage at the same time? Stop it! This event is going to sell out quicker than right now and sooner than at once. KBLA Talk 1580's annual Black History Month luncheon, Thursday, February 26th at the Grammy Museum. It's gonna be legendary, just like them.
What's up? What's up?
What's up? You got to laugh the pain away.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me.
KBLA, Talk 1580, download the app.
Jesse Jackson Jr., welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Now, our second hour, The Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens, commemorating and celebrating our Black History Month series. Reverend Teresa Terry Horde Owens is a historical figure herself. She's the general minister and president of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, an author and advocate for the church living out its calling. She is the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination. Since her election in 2017, Reverend Horde Owens' ministry actively reflects the disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church, being a movement for wholeness, welcoming all to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us. Reverend Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and to your show, The Faith Not to Fall, with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens on KBLA Talk 1580.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you, and happy Black History Month.
It really, really is going to be an amazing month. And I know, it's impossible to cover the historical significance of the Black church in an hour. So we are obviously going to have this conversation over the course of the next month, and we'll be integrating, I would assume, some of the current events to which the Black church itself is being called to address, to act in the present. But I'm thinking, just before the break, Reverend Owens, I've been thinking that when I think about the pre-construction of the United States from 1619, before the Declaration of Independence, right up until the Declaration of Independence, I treat American history like it's a construction project. Mm-hmm. Pre-construction, construction, Civil War, deconstruction, reconstruction, Jim Crow, second Reconstruction, and it looks like we're going to enter some new form of Jim Crow by the time these 4 years are over under Donald Trump. I want to focus for a moment on this idea of pre-construction. Before there is a United States, there are very few rights and or privileges that belong to the newly freed men and freed women. Over time, we are allowed to assemble on Sunday. And in that assembly, out of it comes our spirituals. Out of it comes our ability to communicate what's going on the plantation and what's happening in the world. Out of that Sunday gathering, when we were allowed to gather, our version of the Bible took on a different significance than the one that the foreman and the slave master were reading. Madam President, we saw something else.
We saw our own agency, really, in these gatherings. We saw the establishment of leaders within our communities. Quite often, even during slavery, it was the minister, the preacher, who, during times of slavery, was not full time, and not even later. But those were often among the most educated. After emancipation, post Civil War, we started establishing Black colleges and universities to train our teachers, and those become two of the most valuable and respected paths to success, was really through the pulpit and through teaching. But when we built our churches, we owned the building. We owned the resources. It was one safe space that we could control, at least while we were in it. People have bombed churches over the years, but I see a lot of agency in the very idea of the Black church, even though and many times, the AME Church, the AME Zion Church came out of a movement where Black folks were forced to sit in balconies, and they rebelled against that. And so that segregation came really as our way of self-selecting the right to do church the way we wanted to do church.
I'm thinking also, and I know we'll come forward in just a moment, that the church was also a place of great therapy. There were many, many times, more times and more numerous than we can say, that a family may gather in a church on Sunday. but by next Sunday, some members of the family may no longer be present. They may have been, and that was a lot to pray about. That was a lot to preach about for a family that was in its own kind of mourning, or maybe even someone had been lynched, or someone had lost their foot, or had been severely beaten, and so maybe someone was now pregnant by the overseer and so when we to church on Sunday morning during the pre-construction period, and for most of the existence of the Black church, given the chronology of when we got here to freedom, the church was a place of enormous trauma and ways to deal with trauma in our space.
Absolutely. And I think if we lose sight of that, we lose a great understanding in why we do things the way we do in our community, in church, and what just even the practice of Christianity means to us, particularly in the United States.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to The Faith Not the Fall with Reverend Teresa Hord Owens. More on our Black History Month schedule and through our programming because it matters. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
My son loves to fly kites, but my active psoriatic arthritis can sometimes hold me back. Now with Skyrizi to treat my skin and joints, I'm ready to go. Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults, helps with less joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and fatigue. For those who also have plaque psoriasis, 90% clearer skin is possible with just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
With Skyrizi, there's nothing like clearer skin and better movement, and that means everything. Ask your doctor about Skyrizi today and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter? Right? And the best part? They accept Discover. Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right. So we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide, based on the February 2025 Nielsen report.
Are you 50 or older? This news is for you. The CDC recommends you get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at risk. People 50 or older are over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia compared to adults 18 to 49. Just one shot can help protect you. Learn more and schedule at vaxassist.com. That's VAXassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Hey, KBLA delegation, you know what's better than laughing? Laughing while celebrating the legends who made us laugh in the first place. KBLA Talk 1580 is proud to present our annual Black History Month luncheon. And this year, we're honoring comedy greats, trailblazers who broke barriers, and funny bones at the same time.
You had to grow up early when we was growing up because your parents were sending to the store to buy. You was too young to buy. I want you to go to the store, give me a fifth of gin and a pack of cigarettes. Mama, I'm 2. They ain't gonna let me have that. Here, take this note. You be a little boy walking down the street with liquor and cigarettes. And your neighbors be going, that's a good little boy right there.
We need a little levity right about now. So we're rolling out the red carpet for comedy royalty. D.L. Hughley, Melanie Camacho, Earthquake, Lunel, Dion Cole, Martin Lawrence, and a surprise guest appearance. It's going up Thursday, February 26th in downtown LA at the Grammy Museum. An unforgettable afternoon of stories, celebration, and yes, plenty of laughs. Because let's be real, these legends don't just tell jokes. They have changed the game, opened doors, and made history while making us smile.
You got to go to child support court. You got to get there real early in the morning. You see brothers going into court. You see them come out 3 hours later. I can't pay this. Let me talk to you, baby. Please, let me talk to the witness, Sean. Let me talk to the witness. Brother be working for 3 weeks, get his check is $43.
This year, for the first time ever, we have set aside a limited number of individual tickets for the luncheon. they are going to go fast. And when they're gone, they're gone. So if you want a single ticket, or if your company or organization wants to sponsor a table, move swiftly and get to KBLA1580.com right now. All these comedy giants in one room on one stage at the same time? Stop it! This event is going to sell out quicker than right now and sooner than at once. KBLA Talk 1580's annual Black History Month luncheon, Thursday, February 26th at the Grammy Museum. It's gonna be legendary, just like them.
What's up? What's up? What's up? You got to laugh the pain away.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Folly, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me.
I'm Jackson Jr.
Come on and talk with me.
Welcome forward to The Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens.
Hey, Talk 1580. Download the app.
On the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'm so very grateful that Reverend Teresa Horde Owens is our regular contributor. She earned a Master's of Divinity degree at the University of Chicago Divinity School, where she was a Disciples Divinity House Scholar and recipient of the John Gray Rind Award given to the top MDiv graduates at the Divinity School. Reverend Terry Horde Owens is a native of Terre Haute, Indiana, and a descendant of one of Indiana's oldest African-American free settlements. She earned her bachelor's degree in government with a minor in African-American studies from Harvard University. Madam President, welcome forward to your show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always good to be in conversation with you.
Madam President, I'd like to hang around because I do know we're going to spread these conversations out over the month. I've not had a pre-conversation with you about the show today, but I do want to hang around the trauma of the early church, and I want to juxtapose it to the modern church and its proclivities towards entertainment, and not dealing with what the early pastor in our tradition, because it is the church that has endured. I mean, from before we got here, while we were here, all the way to the present, the one instant, before we could go to Wall Street, before we could go to a law firm, it is the church that endured and that really is responsible for preserving our sanity in the midst of great adversity. So this early trauma, I would imagine, Madam President, would include, for example, a pastor on a Sunday morning and even a congregation or a community having to come to terms with everyone knowing in the church who the master was taking advantage of on the female side of this question, and what it meant for her and her husband to the extent to which they could be married. They could hear the screaming, they could hear the torture, they could hear the master taking advantage of his property. And the church on Sunday morning had to console that reality and to console that man, his pride. And even in the case of our men who might have found themselves debauched and taken advantage of on the plantation, and challenging his manhood and putting him in precarious positions where he had to look his wife, if you will, the extent to which there was legal marriage, in the face on a Sunday morning and come to terms with that level of trauma, or having one's daughter or one's child taken advantage of in that context. This is just surface level stuff of what the pastor, the church, and the congregation, who would only come together once a week in this assembly. There was no assembling on the plantation until they came together to discuss, girl, have you heard? And did you see? Did you see what they did? We got to get out of here. How much more of this can we take? All of this is taking place in the context of a Bible and a pastor trying to console with some listening ears on the outside, some traitorous ears on the inside. You know what they're talking about in there, Master? You know what they're talking about in the church? They talked about what happened around here. All of that is that traumatic experience becomes the basis of community of suffering, dealing with problems together in sacred space. Madam President.
You know, at the heart of this is what I think the real beauty of the Black church. And I always tell people they ought to be glad for the Black church. Somehow we found the real meaning of the gospel in our ability to read and understand that Bible. We had to survive by juxtaposing this image of a good and loving God, of a Jesus who loved us and died for us, with the realities of beatings and enslavements and people being sold and the human torture that they lived with day in and day out. And yet this same Jesus was being preached by their masters as someone who had ordained slavery. There are Black folks in the South who still don't like the letters of Paul because he talks, you know, the infamous passage that is often misinterpreted about slaves obey your master. But the work that a preacher has to do to deal with that trauma is to create a sense of a God who loves them. And our understanding of justice comes when we hear these stories from the Old Testament, particularly the liberation of the Jews from slavery in Egypt. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land, tell, O Pharaoh, to let my people go. A lot of our spirituals are tied to stories in the Old Testament of God's liberation and justice. And if we could find this just and loving God in the midst of all of that, despite what we were seeing and experiencing, that's a huge, I don't know if I'd call it a mind game, but that's a lot of spiritual work to make sense out of a God that's that good in the midst of such a continuous horror. And our ability to be free to express ourselves. And we brought with us, right, we call them survivalisms, the Africanisms that have survived, of the way in which many folks worship in Africa is one of music and dancing and movement and very vocal. And that became early on a characteristic of our worship. And so those things that were like home to us, that had been passed down to us from our ancestors before they came, before they were enslaved, it becomes important in a lot of ways, because we're moving our culture and we're making this Christianity thing fit us by using a lot of our practices and rituals and musical stylings and dancing, so that it's familiar, but yet trying to make sense. This loving God that's portrayed in Scripture, and even our identifying, as James Cone, the cross and the lynching tree, our identifying with Jesus and the trauma of the crucifixion. We saw battered and bloody bodies chained to a stake in the yard when they were being beaten and whipped. That was how Jesus was beaten and scourged. Bodies hanging from trees, lynching. When we then heard about these stories of Jesus, we could relate. So blood in the African American context, because of that trauma, is not necessarily so it's not salvific. We will say the blood will never lose its power, but we're not afraid of the blood because blood was reality in our environment. And we were able to make sense of the blood that we saw in our reality because we could associate with this suffering Savior. And yet we could still claim the justice that's being proclaimed. I mean, the fact that Black people are Christians in the United States is clearly a miracle. It's just a miracle.
Strange fruit. It's really strange. It's strange fruit. No doubt about that. I'm thinking in this moment, as we think about the 1619 to the July 4th, 1776 period that I call pre-construction, and the church, its formation, and the trauma that it had to deal with. And as I juxtapose it onto today, this 5-year-old boy that has been held and recently released his father from ICE detention, just the sheer brutality of a child growing up depressed, no longer with his classmates, no longer in community. And I'm thinking about in cities around our country, but Minneapolis in particular, where you've got non-Hispanic, non-white, and white families who are taking the children to school of Hispanic parents while their parents remain either secluded or in hiding for fear of being snatched away from their families, controlling ICE agents. A number of articles are now being written about the fugitive slave laws.
Yes, yes.
Fugitive Slave Act, and the way in which ICE, by the way, these are masked Texans that they're sending to these cities. These are masked citizens from southern states who became ICE deputies. Some of them are January 6th rioters. So this independent kind of corrupt political force, this army that the president has assembled for the purposes of carrying out extra constitutional activity that invokes the Fugitive Slave Act. And for Don Lemon to even be charged under the Ku Klux Klan Act is some indication of what was taking place in pre-construction, the pre-construction period of the United States, and the trauma that the Black church had. I might add one other thing very quickly. Strange fruit. They would leave a slave hanging on a tree to teach other slaves on the plantation to be. And it was not just sight, it was also smell. So a decomposing human being is hanging from a tree as an ever-present reminder in your senses. There's no way out of this condition. Madam President, the development of the church.
You know, and the fugitive slave law coincides with, you know, the first police were not the sheriffs on the Western expansion. They were the patty rollers, they called them, that went in search of runaway slaves. And even the movie 12 Years a Slave shows us that a man who had been free literally just snatched off the street because somebody made an argument that he had been previously enslaved. And so that lack of legal protection for those who were enslaved, and even those Blacks who had obtained their freedom, they were never safe on the streets. They lived in constant fear of being snatched and taken. Again, this trauma of what happens to the children. We see that today, not only in Liam, but in kids on the south side of Chicago or the west side of Chicago who see shootings and killings and violent police interaction of their parents and family, and the injustice of how the criminal justice system has treated our communities. Little kids without parents who've been falsely accused, falsely charged, falsely convicted, falsely incarcerated, and the generational trauma that is still continuing to happen since that point. My great-great-grandfather emancipated from a plantation in Georgia because he ran away with the Union Army during the war, comes to Indiana in the 1840s, and always had a fedora to cover his eyes for the rest of his life, even after the war. He was always afraid that somebody was going to find him and snatch him and take him back. That doesn't leave our memory. It doesn't leave our bodies. And in our case, Black history says we keep compounding the traumas. And the beauty of our history is that we keep finding ways to overcome. But there are lots of ways, I think, in which we still have not dealt even with the generational trauma that does go all the way back to enslavement.
You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580, The Faith Not to Fall, with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens. She is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She is a woman. She is an African-American woman of color, and she is the leader of a denomination where African-Americans are in the minority. And she confronts, even within the context of her denomination, its own challenges of recognizing her authority, which is not unlike the challenges that African-American women face in every phase of their existence. How she works through these These challenges, even within the context of a Christian denomination, matter to our thinking even at this hour in the nation. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to KBLA Talk 1580 on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is calling for major reforms at the Department of Homeland Security as the House prepares to vote to end the government shutdown.
ICE agents should conduct themselves like every other law enforcement agency in the country.
On ABC's This Week, Jeffries said Democrats will meet to decide their approach to DHS funding while calling the Senate-backed deal a step in the right direction. Another black lawmaker is facing COVID relief fraud charges. Georgia State Representative Dexter Sharper is accused of collecting more than $13,000 in unemployment benefits while still earning income from his business, music work, and his legislative salary. And rapper Nicki Minaj skipped the Grammys this year and then went on social media blasting artists who attended. After host Trevor Noah mentioned her absence, Minaj fired back with offensive posts targeting Jay-Z, Chrissy Teigen, and Lizzo. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A year ago on this date, February 2nd, 2025, the Lakers and Dallas Mavericks made one of the most surprising trades in NBA history. Anthony Davis to the Mavericks in exchange for Luka Doncic. The trade ended up being a disaster for the Mavericks franchise. Davis has played in only 29 games for the Mavericks. The deal also led to Mavs GM Nico Harrison losing his job. Davis, once considered a premier player in the NBA, is now the subject of trade talks again ahead of Thursday's trading deadline. Doncic has become an impact player for the Lakers. He's played in 67 games and leads the NBA in scoring this season with 33.6 points per game. Doncic also is second in the league in assists with 8.8 per game. The Lakers front office is still smiling after convincing the Mavericks to make that trade. The Lakers wrap up their 8-game road trip Tuesday night at Brooklyn. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
They call it progress, but progress has a price. Land once held in black hands, taken, stolen, erased. Acres paved into highways, fields burned. Homes replaced by parking lots and broken promises. Every deed lost was a dream deferred. We talk about millionaires, but what about the millionaires that never were? The farmers whose soil was seized. The families who watched their inheritance disappear. The wealth that never had a chance to grow because its roots were ripped from the ground. They took the land, but never the legacy, because the soil remembers, and so do we. Every story matters. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and amplify these stories. If this is part of your family's history, visit blacklandlost.org/share your story and help bring us closer to justice.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with the world. African Focus Incorporated is a community-based organization whose mission is to bring Africans and African Americans together, lead charitable initiatives on the motherland, and educate people from all walks of life on the beauty, legacy, and opportunity of Africa's 54 nations. And it's that time once again when African Focus is teaming up with KBLA Talk 1580 for our 8th annual African Focus Trailblazers Tour. Travel with us in 2026 when we're headed to the Southern African nations of Zambia and Botswana for a historical, cultural, and vacation tour led by me, Dominique DePrima, Cultural Ambassador for African Focus Incorporated. Enjoy luxurious accommodations, conscious fellow travelers, shopping, adventures, cultural tours, wildlife safaris, and a giant waterfall, one of the world's 7 wonders, along with a chance to be of service at an orphanage on the continent. Become an AFI trailblazer by exploring the motherland with a nonprofit organization that has members in Africa and America to help roll out the red carpet for you, and together we'll make a difference and have fun doing it. For more information, visit africanfocus.org or call 310-676-7300. That's 310-676-7300 or africanfocus.org. Whether it's stateside or exploring the diaspora, we're with you every step of the way. African Focus and KBLA Talk 1580. Come go with us.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and the Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens. Reverend Owens is one of our great contributors. She starts our week out on a high spiritual note, and I'm so grateful that she's our guest and regular contributor on this Monday morning program. Hi, Reverend. How are you? I think you might be muted.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Welcome
yes,
forward.
I'm well and glad to be here.
I am so grateful that you've stepped out of one of your conferences to be on the show today. You know, Reverend, I want to hang around this because, again, we've got more days to discuss the transition of the church from the present to pastors now flying through the sanctuaries, to the rhythmic nature of the entertainment arrangement the church has become. We're going to go from this pre-construction period through its most philosophical in the 60s, the liberation awakening, that we have an obligation. We'll get there. But today we're dealing with the trauma of the early Black church and the early church experience, because it was the basis for our assembly, that we had a place that we could actually come together and plot in very spiritual terms, survive, if you will, under the circumstances. I share people in my book, A More Perfect Union, that the idea of slavery is not new to humankind. In fact, the history of unfreedom is more of a national, if not international, if not global, but certainly historical form of organization of human history than freedom. Freedom is new. Freedom is new. It's new for us since the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Whatever we are becoming as Americans, it's new. But the history of the world, different forms of slavery have taken place. Peonage, indentured servitude, from the beginning of time. American slavery is different. Peter Kolchin argues in his book that this is the first system where the color of one's skin permanently kept you in a caste. You cannot escape from it. You cannot get out of your skin. And So the assumption is that you are a slave and you are permanently locked into a constitutional system in our country that requires constitutional liberation. With that said, I'm thinking, Madam President, that in the early church, you are impossible.
Oh, absolutely.
You're even within the confines of the slave
Oh, yeah.
tradition. A black
Yeah.
woman preaching and leading
Oh,
white, that ain't happening.
No. We have some early 20th century preachers, Jarena Lee with the AME Church, and we have a Sarah Bostwick and the Disciples who are early. But yeah, it's unheard of. And during enslavement, we also have to remember part of what we're talking about, the conference that I'm here in Tulsa with our Center for Indigenous Ministries. We've been talking about the doctrine of discovery, which really becomes theologically framed by papal bulls, these papal issue documents in the mid 1455, another in 1493, that gives the authority to conquer quote unquote heathen and barbarous people and subject them to perpetual servitude, and then introduce them to the way of Jesus Christ. So the trauma is inflected by the fact that everything that we're dealing with is done in a system that has already dehumanized us. Long before we were brought from Africa, European powers were claiming parts of the world they did not own, and people who did not look like them, and naming them and just declaring that they were heathen and uncivilized, and that bringing Christianity was a benevolent thing. But the Christianity they brought taught that Jesus approved of all of this, which is why I say that the miracle that we have is to have understood the power of Jesus and the power of the liberating God and the gospel, even during times of slavery, to be able to make sense out of all of that in a system that had already dehumanized us and had to dehumanize us in order to for white European colonial powers to both take land here in North America, but also to say that they had the right to go and take people from native lands and bring them across the waters, drop them off on different islands along the way. To engage in the slave trade was almost seen as it's a benevolent thing to do for these people because they are barbarous. And by the time this happens in the 1600s, you've almost got 200 years of people thinking that this is okay. That's a trauma to have that kind of history going that far back, to name you as being unhuman and to disrespect you and expect you to show these Christian models of forbearance and long suffering and love, etc. The brain can only do so much of that without needing, and I think that's what you're getting at, the outlet that we needed to have in the church to take these two realities and make them make sense for us.
I'm going to hit you with a hypothetical that's going to get me in trouble, but I think it's part of your lineage. I know it's part of Barbara Arnwine's lineage, but I absolutely believe it to be part of yours. Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, in my opinion, were ministers.
Mm-hmm.
They were preachers. Now, we don't look at them that way, but I'm gonna work with this for about 30 seconds. They confronted many a conservative black preacher on the plantation who told them, no, we're not going nowhere. We're going to be still. You're not going to get us killed. And these sisters really advanced the liberation tradition because they looked many a Negro in the face and told them, I've even heard Harriet Tubman said something.
Yes.
I would, Negro, I'm gonna shoot you dead. If
we go forward or you die. It's basically.
But they had these black women had developed a hermeneutic of the gospel that was different than the comfortable black preacher, even in a shotgun church in slavery. That these sisters had enough, and these are two women that we elevate. But to think about black women in a far more progressive context on the plantation.
Absolutely. And, Harriet Tubman, initially, one of her trips back was to get her husband. And when she went back, he didn't want to go with her. And so she made the decision still that was not the way she was going to leave her life. And it devastated her at the time. But she goes forward. And again, Go Down Moses, they use those spirituals. Sojourner Truth, uses that sort of pseudonym of Sojourner Truth because she's always referencing scripture. Harriet uses that to really guide and comfort her, but it gives her a kind of strength because she's relating herself. They called her the Black Moses. She is inspired by that kind of agency and that kind of determination that this is what I must do for my people. And she always felt called by God. She suffered from epilepsy, but really felt this deep spiritual call to lead her people to freedom, as many as she could do. Even though she would never have been admitted to preach in a pulpit, she risked her life many, many times trying to get people out of slave territory and into the North where they could be free.
Liberation theology did not start with James Cone. It started with these sisters right here holding some Negroes at gunpoint.
Amen.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More when we come forward on The Faith Not the Fall with Reverend Terry Hoyt Owens on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks vapors in an easy-to-apply stick, and it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapo Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks vapors when you need more comfort for yourself. Use as directed.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline Nasal Spray?
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
Are you drowning in IRS tax debt? Angela was. She called Civic Tax Relief and saved over $80,000. Felicia was having health problems, got behind on her taxes, interest and penalties were adding up. She called Civic Tax Relief and saved over $15,000. Civic Tax Relief is a professional tax negotiation firm that can protect you from the IRS. If you're getting collection letters, call Civic Tax Relief for a free consultation. They will go to work helping you discover all the relief programs you may qualify for free. James owed the IRS $37,000. Civic Tax Relief represented him against the IRS, and by the time everything was completed, he did not owe the IRS anything. If you are in trouble with the IRS, call Civic Tax Relief for your free consultation now. 800-200-2257. 800-200-2257. Get a free consultation and real tax relief. Call 800-200-2257. 800-200-2257.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through offer community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. KBLA Talk.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Terry Hord Owens. Madam President, welcome forward to the show.
Thanks so much. Always good to be with you.
I find our conversation to be among the most fascinating that I've been able to have, and I don't want to dominate it because I'm such a student of yours and totally taken aback by the knowledge that you bring to the show. This is our final segment in this hour, and I know that you'll be back every week going forward. There must be some things on the subject matter that we are either addressing or things that are taking place contemporarily that you'd like to bring up in the final segment of the show, Madam President.
You know, I think in these times, one of the things that's important as my predominantly white church joins others with talk of decolonizing, the church, to remove what I was saying before about that declaration of people being heathen and therefore in need of this gospel in a way to both civilize and restore their humanity. But Africans came when they brought us. We had spirituality, we had religion. We had God. It was not framed as Western Christianity. Islam was prevalent on the continent, but back to the days of the Egyptian pharaohs, we understood the idea of one God, and that was poo-pooed. But we came here with practices that taught us how to sing and dance, and practices that taught us how to go beyond ourselves for that emotional kind of support. And sadly, the Western, cultural mores have made what is indigenous to us as Black people in terms of our worship and our way of connecting with spiritual things seem sort of uncivilized, right? Well, the slaves did that. Uneducated Blacks did that. No, you go to Africa. Every time I've gone to Africa, South Africa, Western Africa, the ring shout where people come down front and move and sing and dance. I am so comfortable with worship in Africa. Now you may say, okay, they've been Christianized and Westernized, but that worship is very, very, it's very much us. And you can
Madam
see,
President, I owe you an apology, and I also owe our listeners an apology, because I accepted the framework that let's talk about when we're introduced into Christianity, preconceived, when we get here and it's the majority religion and what we've done to transform it. But you're so right. We came from a richness of tradition that believed in God that had nothing to do with what we've had to go through to realign ourselves with that spiritual purpose.
Right.
I apologize to you and to our listeners, and please continue.
Oh no, but I do think what we've done to transform Christianity is important, which, as I was saying earlier, it's a miracle that we got to the real heart and the meat of the story, that we could love and serve a Jesus. Given what we were taught about Jesus, it was our own ability to enter into those texts and see the truth and see the liberation in the story and understand what God was really saying. And that comes from a sense of oneness with the divine that was already present, be it Islam or even other native African, traditional African religions. The idea of one God, the idea of community in traditional African culture is something that we brought to Christianity, because we've had to fight against that individualistic kind of nature where it's you for me and me for you. If you don't eat, and you don't work, you don't eat. African culture says we're all here. We're all going to, if you can't work today, you're still going to eat today, because I'm going to make sure that you have, food. And that's been part of our adaptation and transforming of Christianity, is to really pay attention to the liberation in the Old Testament and the words of Jesus in the New. But when you go to Africa, you see when they worship as Christians, those practices came from African culture.
Madam President, just before we get to your word of hope, I just want to say this. I hope that this particular movie wins all 16 Oscars. There is a scene in the movie where they reflect upon our tradition in the juke joint. And it takes us through the history all the way back to Africa and the influences in the music, and how so much of it was who we are and who we were. And so I wish I hope they win all 16 Oscars, but in this moment you're reminding me that I'm not bound by the system and even the spirituality of this situation and the limitations of it. We came from that free flowing expression. Madam President,
we came from a system, and our hope lay in our connection with that divine, and the ability that we could connect with that divine and get rid of the evil spirits, dancing out in the juke joint. They believed that they could connect with that divine power and remove evil from their presence. And we've always had that. And people say voodoo, this, that, and the other. That's a connection with the divine. Maybe not in the Christian way that you understand it today, but if Christians had a better connection with the divine on a large level, if we could really get, as our African ancestors did, into the truth and the power of what that gospel is really saying, that could set us all free. But that power of connection, we should never let ourselves as Black people feel that somehow we're uncouth or uncivilized or we don't know, because we've got power. We know how to connect with the Almighty, and we've always known how to do that in some way.
And it's that connection that's going to lead to no King's Day. It is that connection that could lead this very nation to a general strike. It is that connection that is the source of our resistance. It is that connection that even in the face of evil, when they shoot James Reeb in the face, and when they kill Jimmy Lee Jackson, and when they kill Viola Loizzo, and when they kill Mr. Pretty and Miss Good, and when they kill George Floyd, and when Langston Hughes, a central figure in the whole Renaissance, It's his birthday. My producer is telling me in the middle of my little speech.
Yes.
I was trying to get through that. Okay. And so, lift every voice and sing. All three stanzas, including the ones we try to scat through,
Right.
actually tell us the journey of our story. And
That's
so,
right.
America, Langston Hughes said, never was America to me. But that determination, that space,
Yeah.
we pause and reflect upon our journey. America will be. Madam
Will
President,
be.
thank you for joining
Yeah,
us.
that's the hope. America will be.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.